So you're all aware of MKBHD's famous phrase that I've been using this phone for the past couple of weeks, right? Well, I've been using this phone for the past couple of months because yes, we received this before the lockdown, but due to all the circumstances, the phone could not be launched, and the Vivo V19 has finally been launched in India for a price of rupees 28,000. And we've been using this phone, as I said, for the past 2 months or so. So let's review it and tell you if you should be purchasing the Vivo V19 or not. So let's begin with what's most obvious when you first hold the phone in hand, which is the build quality and design. Now the size that the Vivo V19 is actually fantastic. It fits in the hand really well. Now if you watched our K20 revisit, which if you haven't, we will leave it in the I button above. And that's where I said that the phone is really nicely sized and it fits really well in the hand, and the same can be said about the Vivo V19 as well. It has a 6.44 inch display, which I feel is a perfect balance between a large screen as well as usability, especially when you consider one-handed usage. Now it also fits really well in the pocket. That is something that I observed, albeit of course we haven't been able to go out a lot in the lockdown situation. But in general, the build quality actually seems really nice. The back is very reflective. It's almost like a mirror. Although I found it to be quite nice. It reflects colors really well. It actually takes the color of whatever the color of the light is which hits the back, and it forms really interesting patterns. And the glass back is actually Gorilla Glass 6, which is nice to see. However, on the front they've skipped Corning Gorilla Glass for some reason and they've gone for the short glass. I don't know why, but well, yeah, that is about the back. However, it actually catches a lot of fingerprints during usage, which is expected. You can just slap a case on this and you will be good to go. The rest of the package is pretty similar. You get a USB Type-C port on the bottom, which is nice to see. Oppo and Vivo are two brands who were constantly stuck on micro USB for a long time, but finally, given the price point of this phone, they've made the move to USB-C. We still get a headphone jack. The output is normal, nothing great. Single bottom firing speaker. You get the power and volume buttons, and you also get triple slots, which means you can use 2 SIMs and an SD card for expansion, which is nice to see. Now moving to the front, as I already said, we get a 6.44 inch AMOLED display on the V19, and with the AMOLED display, of course, you get the punchy colors and the deep blacks. The contrast levels are really good. Overall, the display is a really nice panel if you consume a lot of content, and even if you play some casual games. And the reason I say casual games is something that we will address in the performance department. We also get dual punch hole cameras on the top right, and one of them is actually a wide angle camera, which is good. It's not a dud, meaning you don't get a depth sensor or something, but yeah, we'll talk more about that in the camera section. However, surrounding both front camera modules is a silver ring, which actually looks kind of weird in our honest opinion. They could have done without it. However, it's there and we have to live with it. We also get an in-display fingerprint scanner, given that this is an AMOLED panel, and it's actually one of the very fast and accurate scanners that we have seen in any smartphones of late. Yeah, so that accounts for the display part. Now moving on to what I would say is one of the most disappointing aspects of the V19, and that is performance. Now everything that I say with regards to performance is keeping in mind that the phone costs about rupees 28 to 30,000. So that's like the price bracket of the V19. and for that price what we are getting here is a Snapdragon 712 SoC. Now 712, for those of you who don't know, is just an overclocked 710, and for this price point that is actually very disappointing. We get phones with the 720 or the 730G chipsets for under rupees 15 to 20,000, and this is almost double that price. Don't get me wrong, if you're using the phone for day-to-day tasks like WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you obviously won't be troubling the CPU too much, and you would still be getting decent performance. However, if you game a lot, if you play a lot of PUBG or COD or such heavy games that actually affect the CPU and GPU performance, well, you are going to be disappointed with the V19. Do not get it if you are into heavy gaming. Otherwise, the FunTouch OS that runs on this phone has actually been polished a lot. The last time I used it, FunTouch was pretty bad. You know, it was a blatant iOS ripoff wherein you had to swipe from the bottom to get the control center, etc. However, that has now been moved onto the status bar like traditional Android, and this is something that I really appreciate. Also, you get a lot of features. The dark mode that is baked in is actually really nice. And one really big gripe that I have, that I still have with FunTouch OS, it's been there since a long time, and that is you cannot enable developer options, because if you do, you get a constant flashy warning on the status bar that says developer options enabled, please disable, please disable, please disable. Yeah, it's pretty bad. So yeah, that is pretty much it about the software aspect. Now on the back, we actually get a quad camera setup with a primary 48 megapixel sensor, and we get an ultra wide, bokeh and macro sensor. So basically they are not giving us a telephoto, which if you're giving 4 cameras, I feel is sort of a must. Well, anyhow, the primary camera is actually really good. The output is very saturated, and if you like those kind of images wherein the colors pop out and look pleasing to the eye, you are actually going to be really happy with the camera performance of the Vivo V19. The ultra-wide shooter also does fairly well, but of course there is a loss of detail. Now, given the lockdown situation here in India, we were not really able to test out the cameras to its maximum potential because we haven't been able to go out, but given the limited amount of samples we took, the camera performance actually seemed quite promising. Even the included night mode actually does a really good job. Now on the front as well, we get dual cameras. The first is a 32 megapixel primary shooter, and we get an 8 megapixel ultra wide. Again, as I said, it's nice to see an ultra wide shooter, not a depth sensor on the front, so you can actually fit in a lot of people if you want to take those group selfies. Again, the front facing camera also did pretty well. You get a big deal of beautification, so if you're into that kind of a thing, you're going to like the front facing shooter on the V19. Vivo has always been about, you know, cameras, especially the selfie cameras, and the cameras are where the V19 shines the most. Well, coming to battery, we get a 4500 milliamp hour battery on this smartphone, and given that the display is AMOLED and it's considerably smaller compared to the competition, I know 6.44 inches is not considered small anymore, but of course, given that we have phones up to 6.67, 6.7, even touching the 7-inch mark, this is a kind of a small display, and given the high capacity, the battery life on this thing is amazing. Now again, let me tell you that the lockdown situation is not the best time to judge a phone's battery life, because we haven't been able to use it on mobile data data. It's been connected to Wi-Fi all the time because we've been at home, and that's when we do not really know the real world usage. But given the performance that we've been seeing of late from this smartphone after a couple of software updates as well, I think the battery is a really strong point of the V19. And to accompany it, we also get a 33 watt fast charger within the box itself, which takes about 1.5 hours to completely top up the V19, and that is again really nice to see. Well, yeah, if I have to sum up, then the V19 at a price of rupees 28,000 is actually hard to recommend. I mean, the cameras are good, the size and the build quality is nice, and the battery is really long lasting. However, again, it comes down to the point of the SoC, which I feel is seriously underpowered for this price. Now, given that this is an offline centric smartphone, we expect Vivo to price it that extra premium, but there are better options out there, including what I mentioned. The Poco X2 actually does better even in the camera department, and of course it has a much newer SoC and costs almost half of what the V19 does. You can even get the K20 Pro actually, which still holds its own even in 2020 and costs pretty much similar to what the V19 does. And now that the lockdown is ending, we can actually expect a lot of new smartphones to launch, so we would suggest you wait for those and then decide to purchase a smartphone of your choice. Well, yeah, that was pretty much the Vivo V19 review. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you leave a like and also comment below if you have any questions or queries, and we will be glad to answer them. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you around.